A confidential file reveals an international scandal. A superpower is acting with complete impunity, causing the deaths of hundreds of thousands of residents and the displacement of millions. On the eve of the Iraq War in 2003, Katharine, a translator, arrives at her post as usual. Her job mainly involves receiving and translating confidential documents. That day, she receives a top-secret email whose contents shock her deeply. The American and British governments are planning to spy on other members of the UN Security Council in order to secure favorable votes to legitimize the start of the war in Iraq. A colleague next to her receives a similar email and asks his superior if the information is true. The latter clearly confirms that it is a joint operation by the United States and the United Kingdom, and that they simply have to follow procedures. To achieve this goal, the Americans announce in the media that they suspect Iraq of possessing weapons of mass destruction. The initiation of war requires UN approval. Although the majority of members are against it, the Americans proceed on their own path. Upon seeing this news, Katharine is furious because she knows the Americans are outright lying. Furthermore, the stakes are extremely serious. If the truth is not revealed, innocent people will suffer. As this involves a violation of the Official Secrets Act, Katharine ultimately contacts a pacifist friend and reveals the full content of the email, hoping she can help shed light on the truth. That way, she can have a clear conscience. This friend needs tangible proof, so Katharine takes the risk of committing treason and prints a copy of the document. Additionally, since her friend is openly anti-war, she might be too exposed, so she hands the printed document to a British journalist, Martin. Martin is not naive. He knows that publishing the email without verifying it could land him in prison. His priority is to identify the sender. If it turns out to be a government official, that would likely confirm the email's authenticity. After some thought, Martin takes action. He starts by contacting a national security advisor. After reading the email, the advisor identifies several military terms confirming the document's authenticity, but he cannot certify that it originated from the NSA. The newspaper's editor-in-chief contacts a friend at MI6 and mentions the issue in a roundabout way, trying to find out if the British government is involved in spying on Security Council members. Since a UN war resolution could hide all motivations, if war authorization is granted, neither success nor failure would result in war crimes charges. This leads Martin to suspect a conspiracy by the American and British governments. His friend's response is subtle. He neither confirms nor denies it. The task of verifying the sender's identity is entrusted to another colleague of Martin's. After some investigation, he manages to confirm that the sender works for the NSA. Martin then meets with a general from the Ministry of Defense, asking for his opinion on the email and the consequences of publishing it. The general, an honest man, says that based solely on its content, the email is likely authentic. As for its publication, if it's only meant to embarrass the government, it won't carry much weight. Martin gets the message. Back at the newspaper, he proceeds with the final deliberation with his editor-in-chief. With such an explosive scoop, the paper couldn't pass it up. Even though it would have negative repercussions for the government, they choose to make the matter public. The impact is immediate and resounding, and the story instantly makes the front pages of several newspapers. Martin quickly becomes famous. Numerous media outlets compete to interview him. When Katharine reads the article in the newspaper, she is stunned. All she wanted was to verify the authenticity of the email, but the newspaper chose to publish the truth, sparking a real scandal in other countries as well. She begins to panic, fearing she will be caught and severely punished. The next day, upon arriving at work, she discovers that GCHQ, Government Communications Headquarters, has launched an internal investigation and plans to question all staff.
Internal security will be conducting interviews with each and every one of you.
The seriousness of the situation is palpable. If someone is found guilty of violating the Official Secrets Act, they will face the Supreme Court. Although nervous, Katharine manages to keep her composure and passes her first interrogation without issue. However, the British government holds a press conference to flatly deny all accusations. Katharine is furious and disappointed by the senior state officials. After careful thought, she decides to come forward with the truth, not only to protect her colleagues, but also to expose the lies of the American and British governments. She does not want those lies to lead to war. Soon after, during her second interrogation, Katharine experiences an internal struggle. In the end, she confesses to leaking the information. She is immediately detained, and a team of agents storms her home in search of evidence, hoping to prove she is a spy for another country. They find nothing. During the interrogation, the officer asks her why she acted that way. Was it simply to embarrass the government? Katharine explains that she doesn't work for the government. She works to protect the people. She has the right and the duty to reveal the truth to everyone.
You work for the British government?
No, not really.
I work for the British people.
Faced with her refusal to cooperate, the officer tries to intimidate her by using her boyfriend, a Muslim, as leverage. He hints that the boyfriend could be deported because of the case. He tries to persuade her to admit that she fabricated the information and to publicly deny it. If she continues, she will be prosecuted by the government. Due to the exceptional circumstances of the case, Katharine is temporarily released on bail. Her lawyer, realizing he lacks the necessary expertise, recommends a team that specializes in human rights and political cases. Meanwhile, the United States and the United Kingdom disregard the United Nations Charter and launch the war against Iraq, causing indescribable devastation. All of this is based on unfounded suspicions that Iraq possesses weapons of mass destruction, plunging millions into war. Katharine fails in her attempt to stop the war. All her personal efforts prove insignificant against the power of states. On top of that, she now faces legal prosecution. Her legal team decides to represent her for free. They examine various aspects of the case, such as whether her boyfriend influenced her decision to betray her country. Katharine categorically denies it. Her sole objective was to prevent war and save lives, but she failed.
My motive was to stop a war and save lives. I failed.
That is just one of many issues raised by the prosecution. The defense team needs time to prepare their strategy. In the meantime, Katharine is constantly monitored by agents. When they find out she consulted a legal team, the officer visits her again to remind her of the consequences of violating the Official Secrets Act. He explains that she must not share any documents or information, even with her lawyers, or face additional charges. This means Katharine has virtually no right to defend herself. After witnessing the ugly face of the government, Katharine decides to show her cards. She had previously complied with their demands, but warned that if she were prosecuted, she would make everything public. 2 days later, Katharine received bad news. The case had been handed over to the Crown Prosecution Service, which had decided to move forward with the charges. Her boyfriend was also affected as the British police indiscriminately wanted to deport him. Desperate, Katharine reached out to her political contacts. At the last moment, just before her boyfriend was put on the plane, she received a life-saving call. After that, she had to face the prosecutor's charges. The lawyers, given the sensitive nature of her boyfriend's situation, advised that he stay out of the case. As for Katharine, her legal team offered her 2 strategies: plead guilty and risk up to 6 months in prison, or take on the government and risk spending the rest of her life in prison if convicted. But then the lawyers realized they could exploit the uniqueness of the case. Yes, Katharine had broken the law by leaking information, but she did it to prevent a war. In other words, if the war could be proven illegal, Katharine might win the case. 2 key points had to be clarified: the position of the UK's Attorney General before declaring the war legal, and the actual existence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. If such weapons existed, the UK could justify the war as an act of self-defense. With little time left, the legal team met with the former legal advisor of the British Foreign Office, who revealed that prior to the start of the war, the Attorney General had opposed it and had written a detailed report. It was only after a visit to Washington that he changed his position. Meanwhile, a British war journalist discovered that there were in fact no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and that it had all been a pretext invented by the United States and the United Kingdom to justify the war. Katharine therefore decided to plead not guilty, leaving it up to the people to judge the direction the prosecution would take. A few days later, Katharine appeared before the Supreme Court. Under the watchful eyes of the media, the trial officially began. The prosecutor asked if she acknowledged the charges against her, but Katharine stood firm and pleaded not guilty. To everyone's surprise, the prosecutor didn't push further and, citing an inability to provide compelling evidence against the accused, dropped the charges. Katharine was thus acquitted. From the beginning, the answer had been obvious. The prosecutor wasn't unable to provide evidence. He simply didn't want to. Releasing the report would have amounted to admitting that the war in Iraq was an illegal act, thereby exposing the British government to accusations of war crimes. Why harass Katharine so intensely? It was an attempt to intimidate her, a warning to whistleblowers to understand the consequences of opposing the government. But they hadn't expected Katharine to act so swiftly. In 2010, the British Attorney General explicitly declared that the war in Iraq was illegal, but by then, it was too late. In just a few years, countless soldiers and civilians had already paid with their lives for this unjust war. The film is inspired by real events. The character at the end of the film is based on Katharine Gunn. The film raises a central question: does an individual have the right to oppose the illegitimate actions of their government? It also reflects the essence of human society, which is built on the foundation of morality, respect for humanity, and the creation of a stable order. That's all for today's recap. See you in the next one.